There is nothing new in the world except the history you do not know. Welcome to the Sales History Podcast. I'm your host, narrator, nerd, Todd Caponi. Hey everyone. What I want to do with this podcast is to bring some of the brilliant minds and sometimes crazy ideas from sales history's past to the present. I swear, sometimes when I read LinkedIn posts, I think, gosh, you know what? Those exact same words were said 100 plus years ago. And other times I read some of the books and magazines that I have from the early 20th century and even the late 19th century and think, you know what? I could take a paragraph from these publications, drop them into LinkedIn today, and people would think it was not only brilliant, but that it was said today. And so that's the goal. And here in episode number 1, what I would love to do is to take you back to the late 19th century. William Faulkner called Mark Twain the father of American literature, but from my research, he actually might be the pioneer of sales enablement. And in my research, I found an unbelievable story that really tells me that it might be true. So here's the story. Ulysses S. Grant led the Union Army as commanding general in winning the Civil War. And then he became the 18th president of the United States and served in that role from 1869 through 1877. Now, after the presidency, he invested all of his life savings in an investment firm on Wall Street. That firm was called Grant and Ward, and it was founded with his son, which was also named Ulysses. They called him Buck, so it was Ulysses S. Buck Grant Jr., and then a third partner named Ferdinand Ward. Now, it turns out Ferdinand Ward was a swindler, and later he was known as, quote, the best hated man in the United States. So by 1884, Grant had lost everything through Ward's Ponzi scheme. Everything except, quote, $80 he had left in his pocket. Now, at the time, things were a little bit different than they were today. I mean, presidents didn't receive any sort of pension. There was no retirement plan. So essentially, there was nothing else. Now, Sam Clemens, also known as Mark Twain, who is best known for his books, The Adventures of Tom Sawyer in 1876 and The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn in 1885, he received word that Grant was in a tough situation financially. And having met him years earlier, Twain was a huge fan of Ulysses S. Grant and thought that he was a national hero and a savior of the Union. So he sprung into action. Now, at the same time, Grant was planning to write a book about his own personal memoirs. I mean, his story is amazing, and was just about to sign with a publishing house. Now, the publishing house was going to take the big commission, though. And knowing that this story was incredible, Twain felt that Grant was essentially owed a debt of gratitude, and countered with a proposal in which Twain would publish and distribute the book with terms greatly in favor of Grant and his family. So Grant, being very loyal, felt obliged to honor the original publisher's offer, but eventually he accepted Twain's offer and started writing. Now, sadly, just a couple of months into the writing, Grant was diagnosed with throat cancer. And I guess in hindsight, it wasn't a big surprise given that Grant was known to have smoked 20 plus cigars a day. And so the diagnosis was unfortunately terminal. And so the writing became urgent. So Grant, he wrote night and day through intense pain, knowing that without this book, his family would have nothing following his death. So Grant completed the writing of the book in July of 1885. Now, depending on what you read, turns out he died somewhere between 3 days to 2 weeks after completing the writing of the book. Now, during the time of Grant's writing, Twain was busy building a publishing house. Twain and his nephew, Charles Webster, assembled a massive sales team of 10,000 people, many of which had been members of Grant's army. So they weren't just recruiting soldiers. Twain and Webster had a profile they were looking for, something else beyond just being a soldier. They wanted individuals who could evangelize and bring energy and confidence to every conversation. Twain put together what is clearly the most impressive sales enablement program of the 19th century, and even the first half of the 20th century. Twain put together a 37-page sales playbook to sell the book. This included a script called How to Introduce the Personal Memoirs of U.S. Grant. In it, Twain had lessons on how to be courteous, polite, and be a respectable salesperson. The playbook also had explanations to help the prospect understand that the value of such a book would increase with time, while they'd also be doing the Grant family a service given their financial situation. In the book, it says, "I called to give you an opportunity to see General Grant's book, of which so much has been said in the papers. All 10,000 were trained, encouraged to wear their old uniforms, and sold door to door. The results? Well, the personal memoirs of U.S. Grant became the second largest selling book ever in the United States, next to the Bible. In the end, Twain had the honor of presenting Grant's widow the largest royalty check ever given to an author, which totaled $200,000 and eventually over $450,000. Now, remember, that's in 1880s terms. In today's dollars, that would be somewhere around $12 million. Twain's actions were born out of a deep sense of patriotism and friendship, but also raised the bar for sales campaigns while creating the blueprint for massive scale product launches through sales enablement, which has lasted generations. I swear, I get the chills every time I read that story. 1885, Ulysses S. Grant writes a book, dies within 2 weeks of getting it done, penniless, and Mark Twain puts together a sales force of over 10,000 people, puts together a sales enablement playbook, and sells the book to number 2 in the history of book sales next to the Bible. I just think that's amazing. So, what do you think? I would love to hear your feedback on this. Do you want to hear more about it? If you do, let me know. Give this a great star rating if you love it. If you don't, be honest. Tell me it sucks. I'm totally cool with that. But I would love to use your feedback to determine whether or not I should continue to do this. So thank you for listening. Hope you enjoyed it. And good luck with everything you're doing. Thanks.